So if you're considering a Tesla Powerwall system for your home, whether it's as a brand new solar installation or as an addition to your existing solar setup, there are going to be three key questions that you'll need to know the answer to before you make any decisions. The first question, should you even consider getting a Powerwall, or would solar panels alone be enough for what you want to accomplish? Question number two, if you do opt for the Powerwall, how many batteries would you need? And then number three, how much should you expect to pay for a Powerwall installation? There could be a lot of confusion here, especially when it comes to price. So hopefully by the end of this video, you feel that much more comfortable with whether or not a Powerwall 3 is right for you. So first things first, should you add a Powerwall to your solar setup, or would solar panels alone get the job done for you? Better answer this question, let's narrow down the primary objective that you want to accomplish. For most people, this can be broken down into three different categories. Objective one, and the most obvious, is for battery backup. If the grid goes offline, do you prioritize having electricity at your home? Objective two, maybe your main goal is to get away from the utility, be more self-sufficient, and maximize your overall grid independence. This would be the same objective for those of you who would like to boost your system's environmental benefit as well. And then objective three, and probably the most popular, you just want to save the most amount of money. Most homeowners would probably like to accomplish all three in a perfect world, but we really do need to isolate which goal is priority number one. Now, starting with that first objective, battery backup and outage protection. For some of you, you may have a lot more outages than others due to natural disasters or just general grid failures. And it's really important to consider this because it could either make this feature a primary motivator or just a secondary benefit that's nice to have if it happens. Some people I meet with, they're really worried about power outages, whereas others, it's not even on their radar because it never happens in their area. Solar alone is not going to give you any backup benefits since it's all grid tied. So if the grid goes offline, so does your solar array. There are solar only backup options out there today, but they really don't make sense in my opinion. So if having outage protection really is your main goal, then Powerwall 3 is going to be a fantastic option to consider, and this will help us check off that first box. And for anyone new here to the channel, welcome. My name's Zach. I work direct for a Tesla Premier installer here in Arizona. So I do field a lot of questions on the Powerwall 3 specifically. If that's content that you typically enjoy, be sure to check out the rest of my videos and do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions at all throughout the video, drop a comment or shoot me an email. You can find all that information in the description below. Now, maybe your main goal is to prioritize grid independence, and this could be two sides of the same coin, grid independence and outage protection. But grid independence is more so focused on maximizing day-to-day use where you're going to charge, discharge the battery, and this is going to help in reducing overall utility consumption and really getting the most out of your solar panels. Now, if environmental benefit is also your main driver, this could fall into the same bucket because if you maximize your grid independence, you're also going to minimize your home's carbon footprint. Now, with solar alone, increasing that grid independence is going to be challenging because your solar system is only going to generate energy for 8 to 12 hours on a good day, while your home is going to consume energy for the full 24 hours. You really need a storage system like Powerwall 3 to capture that excess solar energy during the day and then utilize it at night. Otherwise, the utility is going to be the one who's supplying your home with power during all of your non-solar hours. So adding a Powerwall will help reduce your utility consumption each day, and the less energy you use from the utility, the less they will charge you on your monthly statement. So in short, if you really don't like your utility company, you'd rather not give them another dime, and you want to be as self-sufficient as possible, then the Powerwall 3 will likely be the right fit for you since solar panels alone can't realistically achieve this goal. Now, if you're watching this and you do already have a Powerwall, I'm going to need your help. Do me a huge favor and drop a comment below on your experience with your system so far. Hopefully these real life testimonies can provide value to anyone researching the Powerwall to help them better determine if it's a good fit for them. And then for objective 3, we have savings, which is most consumers' primary objective when considering solar in a Powerwall system. They want to save the most amount of money and really boost their overall payback period. And it's usually not that grid independence and outage protection aren't a priority. They're just not the main priority. So whether or not adding a Powerwall is going to be the right decision when it comes to maximizing savings, it's all case by case depending on your situation, your roof direction, sun exposure, total consumption. Things like that are all going to play a role. But your utility company's rate plan, cost for energy, and the price they pay you for excess solar generation are all the most important factors we're going to need to consider. To keep it really simple, there are two things that we want to figure out. First, how much do they pay you for your excess solar energy? We call this solar export. So if your system generates more power than your home needs in real time, this energy either stores in a battery for later, or If you don't have a battery, it's going to be sold back to the utility for whatever rate that they pay you. If you have a true one-to-one net metering, meaning your utility gives you equal energy credit for future use on anything you send them, then a battery will serve you almost zero savings benefit. You could save a few bucks on some grid charges, delivery charges, and so on, depending on how they structure it. But with one-to-one net metering, the grid already acts like your battery because they essentially store your energy for you and then let you use that energy at a later time with zero monetary loss. It works like a bank. You put $1 of energy in, you get $1 of energy to use later. If this is your situation, going with just solar panels, no Powerwall, will give you the best financial benefit. If you do really value outage protection, then maybe that changes the conversation, but ultimately that backup feature will be the only benefit of adding a battery for you, since there's no financial gain to store your own energy and then use it later. If you don't have one-to-one net metering, it's important to figure out how much your utility pays you for your excess solar generation. So for example, here in Arizona, most utilities will pay between 4 and 7 cents per kilowatt hour, but they're going to charge me 15 to 20 cents or more per kilowatt hour that we consume. That means I receive a wholesale credit when compared to what I have to pay to buy that same energy back from the utility at retail prices. And then my solar credits buying power is going to get diluted every time the utility company increases what they charge for their energy. So as rates go up, I have to sell even more energy back to offset this difference. It can get even worse in California and many other solar mature states and parts of the world. So if you are in an area with utility that has a reduced solar buyback rate, here's what doesn't work. Installing an oversized solar system with no batteries with the goal to sell a bunch of energy back to the utility with the hopes that it can eliminate your future utility bill. If this is your situation, then considering a Powerwall for your system is very important. You are likely much better off storing your excess energy for later use than selling it back to the utility during the day for such a low value. So once we know how much the utility will credit us for our excess solar generation, the second thing we need to figure out is if our utility offers any time of use rate plans. Time of use plans where there are times of day where energy is more expensive, called peak times, and then there's times of day where energy is less expensive, called off-peak. It's becoming increasingly popular to really force consumers to shift their energy demand. So if your utility offers some form of time of use, a Powerwall can be extremely beneficial since it can be optimized to store energy from solar and then intelligently discharge it during peak times to really ensure that you're buying as little energy as possible when rates are at their highest. Solar panels alone can't be as reliable since it's an inflexible power source. Obviously, it's only going to work when the sun is out, whereas a battery can be scheduled to discharge energy at these peak times, day or night. This really is a fantastic feature, especially from what we see in areas like California, Texas, and Arizona, for maximizing both your system performance, but also your overall system savings, both short-term and then long-term, especially as rates inevitably increase. So if you combine a reduced buyback rate from the utility plus a time of use rate plan, this is going to be an ideal scenario where a Powerwall likely will give you the best financial gains in the long haul, especially when compared to just solar panels without a battery system. And as you watch this video, if you just want to keep it simple and you aren't quite sure if solar and a Powerwall system is going to be right for you based on your utility options, your goals, everything like that, book a quick 15-minute call with me and I can see if it makes sense. All that information can be found in the description below. So now that we have hopefully narrowed down our primary goal with going solar, if we are going to go with a Powerwall, let's discuss how many Powerwalls we should consider. So when we are considering how many batteries you might need, it starts to get a bit more technical, but we're going to try to keep this simple. We will want to answer 2 questions, and if we don't know the answers, that's fine. Just keep watching because I will help you get these answers. Question 1, how much power output do we need? And then question 2, how much energy capacity do we need? So first, how much power output do we need? So if the grid goes offline right now, what loads do you want backed up by your Powerwall system? In this situation, there's either whole home backup or partial home backup, and they mean exactly what you'd expect. Now, for most homeowners, a single Powerwall 3 has the power output that's suitable for whole home backup, but whether or not just one Powerwall is all you want, that remains to be seen. So to begin, we will need to consider the Powerwall's power output. This is measured in kilowatts, and this is effectively the battery's horsepower. Its continuous output is rated at 11.5 kilowatts, which is 48 amps at 240 volts, so it can handle a 5-ton AC unit, most all EV chargers, lights, Wi-Fi, oven, the pool pump, all of that. Now, for your specific situation, we will need to consider your power demand and figure out what loads we can physically back up with just a single Powerwall. To do this, let's head over to your electrical panel and take a look at all of the breakers. Any load in your home that's on a 60 amp breaker or smaller can be backed up by a single Powerwall 3. And like I mentioned, for many of you, this is likely your entire home's electrical panel. If you do have a sub panel, the sub panel's breaker inside your main panel doesn't count here. So don't worry if that's above 60 amps. You just look at all of the individual loads within the sub panel. If you have multiple AC units, you will want to check their labels for another metric, LRA, which stands for locked rotor amps. Your AC units combined rated LRAs must be at or under 185, 185, and this is a metric to determine the power needed to start the AC motor from a cold start. So if all of your breakers are at or under 60 amps and you're at or under that 185 LRA for your AC units, then one Powerwall 3 will work for whole home backup. If you have any breakers over 60 amps or your AC units are over 185 LRA, there are options you can explore like smart breakers or a soft start for the AC units, or you could just exclude that load from the list of backed up loads, and this would just make it partial home backup, or you just need 2 Powerwalls. Now, if you have a 400 amp service, you will definitely need and want multiple Powerwalls. And if you do already have an existing solar system, there's another thing to consider. This only applies to a retrofit installation, but when it's installed with an existing solar inverter, Powerwall 3 can handle up to 7.68 kilowatts of AC solar input. So if you're above that, then 2 or more Powerwalls are mandatory. Now, most normal people don't know their AC solar system size. So an easy way to figure it out is look at your solar breaker inside your main panel. If it's 40 amps or lower, you're good with 1 Powerwall. If it's above 40 amps, then multiple Powerwalls would be required to support that solar input. Now, hopefully this all answers our first question on power output. Let's move into the second question, which is how long do you need the battery capacity to last? This one is much more straightforward, and the metric we want to focus on here is kilowatt hours, and this is essentially our battery's fuel tank size. A Powerwall 3 features a 13.5 kilowatt hour capacity, not to be confused with that 11.5 kilowatt power output that we talked about earlier. Even though they sound the same and the numbers are pretty similar, these are 2 totally different metrics. And at 100% state of charge, which would be a full 13.5 kilowatt hours, a Powerwall could last anywhere from a few hours to 24 plus hours, depending on that draw rate of energy consumed. Just like a tank of gas is gonna last further when you drive on the highway at a consistent 65 miles an hour versus driving through the city with a lead foot. Your consumption habits really do matter. So the bigger the fuel tank, the further we can drive. So obviously more Powerwalls means more kilowatt hours, which means your home can run on a battery for a longer period of time. And obviously matching the correct energy capacity is gonna be based on your energy needs. So if you use a lot of energy, then 1 Powerwall's capacity may not cut it. If you do value outage protection and grid independence over savings, then I'd probably say 2 or more Powerwalls should likely be the starting point, since you will want more energy capacity to really help reduce the amount of grid usage as much as possible, especially if you have an electric vehicle and you plan to charge from your solar and your battery system and not from the grid. If the main goal is savings, then 1 Powerwall is typically the best starting point, unless you have high energy consumption, of course. And the reason for this is the primary saving strategy of a solar and a storage system is to leverage the time of use rates. And with that, most time of use rates are only 3 to 6 hours long, so you may only need the battery to cover this time slot at a bare minimum. If you don't feel you can comfortably get through a full peak time with your solar and your Powerwall system, then increasing the capacity could be the right move. You can certainly always start with 1 Powerwall and add more in the future, so don't feel like you can't go back and expand as your needs do change. And if you guys are finding this video helpful so far, let me know by dropping me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. So now that you know why you may want a Powerwall system, and you have a general idea of how many Powerwalls will be the right fit for you, what cost range should you expect to pay for a Powerwall addition? You should expect your first Powerwall 3 to fall within the $10,000 to $18,000 range, fully installed. This does not include the solar panels, but it does include your battery, your solar inverter, and all the other necessary components. This can also fluctuate based on your region, and this range is not a quote specific to any one installer. It's just purely based on my experience from many installers here in the US, including Tesla. You can also expect this cost to taper down a bit on each additional Powerwall from the cost of the first one, especially if they're installing the DC expansion packs rather standard Powerwall 3s for your additional capacity. And I know this is a pretty big cost range, so I'm going to cover some variables that would drive this cost up or down. New solar installations should have an installed cost on the middle to lower end of the spectrum, whereas retrofit installs on existing solar systems will usually have a cost point towards the higher end of this range. Some installers won't even touch battery only add on installations either, so if you have solar and you want to add a Powerwall, then you might have to call around to a handful of installers in your area. Other things to consider would be how's the system being installed, where's the equipment going, are there any lengthy wire runs, or really anything that would reasonably drive up the time and the material cost for your installer. You really want the price to be fair for the quality of service, not necessarily the cheapest option out there. So hopefully this information can help you at least gauge if your installer is quoting within fair market pricing. If you did enjoy this video, check out this video here on the screen where I answer the top 47 most frequently asked questions on the Powerwall 3. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk next time.